I'm Nicole Disherta, and I will continue the report regarding off tests and testing, specifically discussing what a good test is. So the topic outline for this report is first we will discuss what a good test is. And under this is reliability and validity and also other considerations to come up with a good test. And lastly is norms. So what's a good test? How we can come up with a good test. Logically, the criteria for a good test is to have a clear instructions of administration, scoring, and interpretation. So it is highly given, or if you want to conduct a good test, you should consider that its instruction, scoring, and interpretation is understandable. It would also seem to be a plus if a test offered economy in the time and money it took to administer, score, and interpret it. So a test can be also considered a good if yung time na mailalaan mo doon and the money you could spend for it is maliit lang. So most of all, a good test would seem to be one that measures what it purports to measure. Beyond simple logic, there are technical criteria that assessment professionals use to evaluate the quality of tests and other measurement procedures. Test users often speak of the psychometric soundness of tests, and these two key aspects are reliability and validity. Let me first discuss reliability. It is said that to have a good test, the measuring tool should be reliable, and the criterion of reliability involves the consistency of the measuring tool. First is the precision with which the test measures and the extent to which error is present in the measurement. In theory, the perfect reliable measuring tool consistently measures in the same way. To exemplify reliability, we should visualize three digital scales labeled as A, B, and C. And to determine if they are reliable measuring tools, we will use a standard 1-pound gold bar that has been certified by expert to indeed weight 1 pound and not a fraction of an ounce more or less. So yung gold bar daw is exactly a 1 pound and no other less. So now let the testing begin. So repeated weighing of the 1-pound bar on scale A registered a reading of 1 pound every time. So sa scale A daw, if repeated mo na ginatimbang yung 1-pound bar, then its reading every time mo siya ginaweight is the same pa rin. So there is no doubt about it na yung scale A is a reliable tool for measurement. On the scale B naman, repeated weighing of the bar on the scale B yield a reading of 1.3 pound. But the question is, reliable pa rin ba ito as a measuring tool? And the answer is yes. Kasi it may be consistently inaccurate by 3/10 of a pound. There's no taking away the fact that it is reliable. So basically, even though there is difference of zero point 0.3 in the reading, but it is still considered reliable. Finally, scale C, repeated weighings of the bar on scale C register a different weight every time. So dito sa scale C, if repeated mo na ginatimbang yung bar, is nagka-come up ito ng different weight every time. On weighing the gold bar, weighs in at 1.7 pounds. On the next weighing, the weight registered is 0.9 pound. In short, the weights registered are all over the map. Ang tanong, does this still considered reliable? Hardly, because this scale is neither reliable nor accurate. Contrast it to the scale B, which also did not record the weight of the gold standard correctly. Although inaccurate, scale B was consistent in terms of how much the registered weight deviated from the true weight. By contrast, the weight registered by scale C deviated from the true weight of the bar in similarly random fashion. So, yung comparison between the scale B and scale C is that scale B is still considered accurate is because its reading is same pa rin not like the skill C which is pa-iba-iba. So whether we are measuring gold bars, behavior, or anything else, unreliable measurement is to be avoided. We want to be reasonably certain that the measuring tool or test that we are using is consistent. That is, we want to know that it yields the same numerical measurement every time it measures the same thing under the same conditions. Psychological tests, like other tests and instruments, are reliable to varying degrees. As you might expect, however, reliability is a necessary but not sufficient element of a good test. In addition to being reliable, tests must be reasonably accurate. In the language of psychometrics, tests must be valid. So the next one is validity. A test is considered valid for a particular purpose if it does in fact measure what it purports to measure. In the gold bar example cited earlier, the scale that consistently indicated that the 1 pound gold bar weighed 1 pound is valid scale. Likewise, a test of reaction time is valid test if it accurately measures reaction time. A test of intelligence is a valid test if it truly measures intelligence. Well, yes, but although there is relatively little controversy about the definition of terms such as reaction time, a great deal of controversy exists about the definition of intelligence, because there is controversy surrounding the definition of intelligence. The validity of any test purporting to measure this variable is sure to be closely scrutinized by critics. If the definition of intelligence on which the test is based is sufficiently different from the definition of intelligence on other accepted tests, then the test may be condemned as not measuring what it purports to measure. So question regarding a test validity may focus on the items that collectively make up the test. Do the items adequately sample the range of areas that must be sampled to adequately measure the construct? Individual items will also come under scrutiny in an investigation of a test validity. How do individual items contribute to or detract from the test validity? The validity of the test may also be questioned on grounds related to interpretation of resulting test scores. Next is, what do these scores really tell us about the target construct? How are high scores on the test related to test takers' behavior? How are low scores on the test related to test takers' behavior? How do scores on these tests relate to scores on other tests purporting to measure the same construct? How do scores on these tests relate to scores on other tests purporting to measure opposite types of construct? So, other consideration is that a good test is one that trained examiners can administer, score, and interpret with a minimum of difficulty. A good test is a useful test because through the use of this ultimately benefit individual test takers or society at large. In putting a test to the test, there are numbers of ways to evaluate just how good a test really is. If the purpose of a test is to compare the performance of the test takers with the performance of other test takers, then a good test is one that contains adequate norms, also referred to as normative data. Norms provide a standard with which the result of measurement can be compared. So let us further explore the important subject of norms. We may define norm reference testing and assessment as a method of evaluation in a way of deriving meaning from test scores by evaluating an individual test taker's score and comparing it to score of a group of test takers. In this approach, the meaning of an individual test score is understood relative to other scores on the same test. An example of this is a teacher comparing its students' result to someone else in their peer groups. So this test is comparing individual results to a group of population. So a common goal of norm reference test is to yield information on a test taker's standing or ranking relative to some comparison group of test takers. Norm. Norm in the singular is used in the scholarly literature to refer to behavior that is usual, average, normal, standard, expected, or typical. Norms norms is the plural form of norm, as in the term gender norms. In a psychometric context, norms are the test performance data of a particular group of test takers that are designed for use as a reference when evaluating or interpreting individual test scores. As used in this definition, the particular group of test takers may be defined broadly. Example is a sample representative of the adult population of the United States, or narrowly. And, and an example of this is female inpatient at the Bronx Community Hospital with a primary diagnosis of depression. So, basic norms are use of psychometric assessment to make comparisons. Our norms are used in psychometric assessment to make comparisons between people and those that do so meaningfully rely on. So, normative sample is the group of people whose performance in a particular test is analyzed for reference in evaluating the performance of individual test takers. So these are the group of scores from other people who've been completed an or, or who already completed an assessment. Whether broad or narrow in scope, members of the normative sample will all be typical with respect to some characteristic of the people for whom the particular test was designed. A test administration to this representative sample of test takers yields distribution of scores. These data constitute the norm for the test and typically are used as a reference source for evaluating and placing into context test scores obtained by individual test takers. The data may be in the form of raw scores or converted scores. So norming refers to the verb to norm as well as related terms such as norming refers to the process of deriving norms. Norming may be modified to describe a particular type of norm derivation. So, norming is about the process of constructing norms or the typical performance of a group of individuals on a psychological achievement assessment. For example, race is the controversial practice of norming on the basis of race or ethnic background. Race norming was once engaged in by some government agencies and private organizations, and the practice resulted in the establishment of different cut-off scores for hiring by cultural group. Members of one cultural group would have to attain one score to be hired, whereas members of another cultural group would have to attain a different score. So basically, race norming is the practice of adjusting test scores to account for the race or ethnicity of the test takers. Norming a test, especially with the participation of nationality representative normative sample, can be very expensive proposition. For this reason, some test manuals provide what are variously known as user norms or program norms, which consist of descriptive statistics based on a group of test takers in a given period of time rather than norms obtained by formal sampling method. Understanding how norms are derived through formal sampling method requires some discussion of the process of sampling. So that will be all for my discussion about what is a good test. Thank you and God bless.